Hello and welcome to another beautiful episode of Healthy Living, reaching you from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Olamide Al-Hassan. As we celebrate World Suicide Prevention Day on September 10th, we turn our focus to a topic of profound importance: suicide prevention and mental health. Now, suicide is a rising public health concern, particularly here in Nigeria, where economic hardship and societal pressures are pushing more people to the brink. Despite this, conversations around suicide and mental health remain shrouded in stigma and silence, thereby preventing many from seeking the help they desperately need. Today, we aim to change that narrative by engaging in an open and transparent dialogue about suicide, suicidal behaviors, and mental health in Nigeria. Our aim is to educate, raise awareness, and inspire actions that could save lives. And now to help us navigate through this crucial conversation, we're joined by Dr. Blessing Eshiet, a medical doctor. She's also the coordinator of Young Doctors Forum FCT chapter and also member Medical Women Association of Nigeria. And we're honored to have her in our midst. Stick around, you see her soon. You're welcome once again to the studio, Dr. Blessing Eshiet.
Thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure. And thank you for taking out time from your busy schedules. I know you doctors are always busy these days, but thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So I know we're talking about suicide prevention, especially because World Suicide Day was just celebrated recently. So in talking about that, and I know that you related it so much to the current situation of the country and all of that, and people really do not find a place where they want to believe that there's something called mental health anywhere. But help us shed light, first of all, on what suicide is and how it can be related to our mental health.
All right. So first of all, suicide is the act of deliberately taking one's life. And in that case, an attempted suicide is usually a failed attempt, right, at trying to take one's life. And it would surprise you that Nigeria has a rate of suicide that is higher than the global rate of suicide per 100,000. So for Nigeria, we have like 17.3 per 100,000, while the global rate is about 10 points per 100,000.
That's almost doubling the percentage per 100.
Exactly, and it's even more than the African rate, which is about 12.3 per 100,000. So you can imagine. So it's actually something that is increasingly prevalent in Nigeria, especially with the economic downturn, which has been happening over the years, but it's been increasing. Studies since 2012 have been showing a rise in suicide in Nigeria, and of course, there are so many things that can be related to the fact that suicide is rising. But I want to believe strongly that the increase in stress that the economic downturn has put on Nigerians has contributed to the increase in the prevalence of suicide in Nigeria.
You know what is surprising me? I know that we have the issues of the economic downturn that has made people, very worried about a lot of things, and it's causing so much stress on the mental health and all of that. But, from the statistics you just gave now, very briefly, I know in other climes we hear more of, people are depressed, they're on antidepressants, meds, and all of that. But you barely hear that here. You barely hear someone saying that, oh, I'm really depressed. In fact, when people finally say, I'm depressed, like, do you even know what the word is? It sounds so weird,
yes.
And people barely talk about it.
Exactly.
Yet it seems to be really with us. What are we doing wrongly that is giving credence to some of these things and, giving rise to suicide?
I think it's the hush-hush attitude around mental health conversations. That's what I believe. A lot of people are going through a lot of things in their lives, and they've not spoken up to anyone about it. Talk more of going to the right sources for help. And then there's the poor health-seeking behavior that is very common in Nigeria, and this is not just about mental health issues. It's common. A Nigerian could have symptoms, going on for weeks, and then the highest they'll do is just maybe stroll up to the closest patent shop and get medication. And this could just be a sign of something really serious, maybe a chronic, or life-threatening illness. But they never take the steps.
We're too religious to want to believe that we could have anything.
Exactly. So that's it. So it's a combination of several factors. One of it is that, there's already stigma around anything associated with mental health, and the Nigerians generally don't like to seek for help or even seek for ways to achieve better health besides maybe the religious aspects like you mentioned. Yes, that's what I think.
even in the religious aspect, I've seen a situation where, you know, I try to bring the realities of things into our conversation. I've seen a situation where if pastor's daughter literally told her dad, my mental health is at stake because people stigmatize against me in school. They feel like I am so out of existence and all of that. And the father was like, what is mental health? Christ has not given you this, I've not given you that. God didn't give you this to become this and that. And it was more like she didn't really have a say until she attempted to kill herself.
Oh,
but
wow.
it still did not become so obvious to him because he felt like she was probably possessed of some sort. People believe that if you attempt to kill yourself, it means that there's a sort of possession. So they don't look at it from the angle of, oh, it's their mental health that is at stake. Thank God we have a generation that's beginning to speak up, you know, against this. But what do we do? What are the signs that one needs to first of all notice that you begin to tell? Are there physical signs where you notice that? Because I know that suicide is a stage, right? There are stages before it can become suicidal. So what are the stages, first of all, and what are the signs that you begin to detect in someone? At least so that if you're sitting next to someone who has these issues, you don't compound and add to theirs. Because we live in a country where, I have to expand on this, because we live in a country where, for instance, you may just be on your own on the road and I'm coming and the next thing I'm transferring whatever aggression I'm coming with from somewhere, I'm transferring it to you like I don't care.
Yes,
I don't even want to know what you're currently handling.
Exactly.
And that in most cases tends to add up to most people's problems and frustrations. So what are those stages that could lead that at the stages before suicide? I know there has to be stages. So what are those stages and what are the signs and symptoms that if one sees, because I'm sure our viewers want to know, they begin to detect that this person could be tending towards this particular stage and this could lead to this?
Okay, so about stages, there are no clear-cut stages, but we have what we call determinants, which include like risk factors and protective factors.
Oh, thank
so
you.
I'm just going to talk about the risk factors, which is the question you are asking. But before I go there, I want to try to speak to my viewers about mental health. First of all, mental health, in the simplest terms, is just a state of mental well-being that allows one to be able to function properly in their school, in their work, and in every other aspect of life, and contribute meaningfully to themselves and to their society. So when you are able to be in that state of mental balance, for want of a better word, you're experiencing mental health, and it's part of well-being, which is also part of the general definition of health. So health is just not merely the absence of disease. Every other thing, including mental health, has to be fully functional for you to have a well-balanced overall health. So mental health cannot be downplayed for any reason whatsoever. And I also wanted to remind us, like as human beings, one of the things that differentiates us from every other strata of life is our mental abilities. Yes, we're all in the animal kingdom, but we have the highest functioning mental abilities, and if that is not is not balanced, then what exactly are we? We're not different from our counterparts who on hoofs and four legs, right? So then back to the risk factors. So there are several risk factors, right, that can contribute towards suicide. But the thing about suicide is that sometimes suicide can be sudden. Like it can be like one moment this person never thought about doing suicide, and then something huge happens, life-changing, life-altering, crisis kind of situation, and then the person commits suicide. And then suicide can be a build-up. It can be a build-up due to accumulating factors, whatever the person is going through, that now pushes the person towards making the decision. Or I think maybe it's better to end it all. Yes, that kind of situation. So first of all, things like mental disorders can contribute to mental health. Decision to make to commit suicide. There are some mental disorders that come with suicidal tendencies. Yes, clinically diagnosed that they have certain mental disorders, maybe on the spectrum of depression, or maybe even to some extent schizophrenia and other mental health challenges, and then they tend to have suicidal tendencies. But it's not just people that have mental disorders. That, in fact, there are many people who have mental disorders who do not consider suicide at all. Now, emotional factors can now come into play. Now, like we mentioned, like depression, of course, can be a diagnosis, but then it can just be an emotional state, not yet a clinical diagnosis, but a state, just maybe some anxiety, you know, depression, some heightened stress at that point, that you may not actually be at this point maybe clinically depressed, like we would call it, you know, in the medical world, in psychiatry, but you could be going through some very heightened, you know, emotional situation. And then some other factors, like if you look at different demographics, maybe you're looking like at older people, for instance, maybe they're retired, maybe diagnosed with a chronic illness, at the you know, the mercy of caregivers, probably abandoned, you know, and that kind of, so you could see that maybe after much abuse, for instance, at the hands of their caregivers or something, they could just decide that maybe I'm a burden to these people, you know. It's something that they are probably contemplating, and you may not know. They'll come, they'll smile at you, but maybe if I just take my life at this point, you know, everybody will be fine without me. Or it could just be a child, like the case that you mentioned, maybe just being bullied, you know, seriously being bullied, at that point doubting their self-worth, doubting their self-esteem, doubting their self-image, beginning to ask existential questions, you know, at the core, who am I really? And if I do not know who I am, that means I don't matter. And then if I don't matter, why am I here? You know, those kinds of questions. And then before you know it, this child is, you know, and the thing about the mind is that it's very magnetic. When you begin to think about certain things, you begin to experience it. So by the time you begin to think, why am I here? What am I doing? You begin to, you know, notice that maybe if I do this, nobody would see that I'm doing. And sometimes they make some little attempts that people may not notice. Some people may be cutting themselves. Yes, some people, so you see them wearing long sleeves, all of a sudden withdrawn, isolated, you know, staying in corners. They could just be engaging in some very harmful behaviors, engaging in substance abuse, you know, things like that. Before you know it, it's like, okay, I think I've had enough. Maybe I should just, and you know, that's how it goes for some people. So it's really, I want to say it's multifactorial. Yes.
You know, because you said multifactorial, that now reminds me of a clip I saw one time of a young man that wanted to, you know, jump down the third mainland bridge because he couldn't afford his own meal. And that also reminded me of a man whose wife gave birth to quadruplets, and he said he was going to kill himself. Like, where is he supposed to get the money to feed the kids from? How much is he going to get the baby food, to take care of them and all of that? We know some of those things happen, but are there medical explanations as to how people are supposed to handle or react to those situations?
Yes, there are. And it's not just medical. It's more like medical, sociological ways of handling, you know, stressful situations in life.
Okay.
Now, so these are like what I mentioned, we talked about. I said that they are determinants. So there are the risk factors, and then there are the protective factors. That's where protective factors will come into play. And one of them is having very good social relationships. This is very, very important. And when I mean social relationships, I know some people just have this, well, let's say, pretentious relationships.
That's why I'm smiling.
Yeah, there's no real heart-to-heart connection. It will surprise you that recently I was in a group, you know, of colleagues, and we're having these discussions. We didn't know we're going through a lot. I myself, I was going through a lot too. So we're like, okay, this work is suffering. This thing we're doing is suffering. What's really happening? Like, everybody just, you know, open up. What's going on? Why can't you contribute the way you should? And then everybody began to talk. And then there was a recurring theme. I heard my own voice, and I heard my voice in my sister, and I heard my voice in my brother, and we were saying almost the same thing. And it boiled down to just 4 points, and one of them was mental health challenges. You can imagine that. So it was affecting our contribution within our workspace. And if not for the fact that we had a leader who was very sensitive and in tune, he was like, okay, maybe we should have an open discussion and find out what's going on. Maybe if we find out what's going on, then we can address it. And then that was how we found out that we were all struggling, you know, with one thing or the other, and we had to try to find ways of, you know, working through it as a group and individually. Why am I saying that? So that we're not brothers and sisters, like by blood. We're not even best friends, but we're able to have that open discussion. It's like a safe space. It's called psychological safety. You know, it should be available in workplaces. It should be available in homes, in families. It should be available in any place, in any community where people are together. They should have a safe space where they can communicate how they feel. So, like you mentioned, I want to go back to the example you mentioned about the girl and her father. That should have been a safe space. Like, you are my father. I should be able to come to you if I'm going through something. And even if you do not understand exactly, you should be able to at least come halfway. Empathize, you know, just try to put yourself in my shoes. It may not fit, but just try.
Exactly.
You know, sometimes seeing that the other person is trying, even if it's just by listening. Sometimes you may tell me your problems and I do not have solutions to it. But if you can see that I genuinely care by my demeanor, you know, by my active listening, you can say that, oh, if this person could help, she really would help. And next time you would be encouraged to come back to me. You know, you could even send me a message. Some people, the people who get this suicide notes usually are people that they maybe sometimes they really, really trust. Maybe, and sometimes if you look back at your conversation with this person that maybe later you realize that this person was sending you signals. You were just not sensitive enough to get it. And the person will not only send hints to people they don't trust. It's usually to someone who they think could help, who they think. So at the point of committing suicide, there's a part of them that feels that maybe the world has failed them, because even that person that they thought they could confide in could not even grasp what they were going through, and that kind of reinforces that self-fulfilling prophecy that I'm not worth anything, so like nobody cares about me and nobody is listening to me.
This social network is something that I know strongly that is important when it comes to maintaining your mental well-being. But from the look of things, especially in the situation where we are right now, for example, I like the fact that you majorly, related it to the current situation that we're in, and that's what a lot of people will relate to. And I believe that you have your vast experience, especially when you handle some of your patients in the hospital. So I'm going to give you an example. So I was at the hospital some weeks back and I saw some women, and I just wanted to see what was happening. So I went to the antenatal session and I just wanted to see if I could even talk to a matron and see if I could get one on the show. And I saw a couple of pregnant women, and I think as at that time, they were telling them that their supposed bill for antenatal had increased by some amount, and some outrageous amount of money like that. And the women were literally screaming like, last year or 2 years ago, I paid so amount, what's going on? Government, just literally said, screaming the government's name. And one woman just sat down and said she's not ready to, proceed. And others were like, you came in as early as 6 a.m. She was like, yes. She didn't know it was this high, so she cannot proceed. The way she sat down, I felt broken. And I was asking myself, what's going to happen to this woman? First of all, there's a reason she came here so early. And these people can't help, because they just said, if you're not ready with your money, don't enter if you don't have your money. So she had to sit outside. And she was just there. First of all, when you're pregnant, your mental health could be a mess. Then you're struggling with the financial aspect of it. And then the society is not making it any easy. In fact, they didn't even tell her that, oh, come in. Any day, when you're coming subsequently, you keep looking for the money. It was a case of, if you don't have your money, do not come in. So in that kind of situation, that's supposed to be like, the society is part of the social network, right? And this is even in the hospital where you're supposed to get help. What are you supposed to do in that case?
Okay, so like part of the ways of tackling the whole mental health challenges and suicide is kind of like a multi-sectorial approach that includes government, includes health facilities, includes the community leaders, community champions, and everybody coming together using data to make a conceptual framework that will ensure that we can prevent this. But that's all English. I'm sure if I asked you to repeat that to me, you would not understand. So there is the part where we write all these wonderful and amazing policy frameworks using research, which is very important. But that's statistics. There's no life, there's no soul in that. The life and the soul is in the actions that we take to ensure that what we've written so beautifully on paper, we can translate it to policy, no, not policies. We can translate it to, like actionable goals, like, things that people can actually see, they can feel, and they can share. They can say, oh, I benefited from this and this and this, and it's been able to help me go from this point to that point. Yes. So I must admit that as health workers, we are failing. As a health system, we are failing. As a nation, I know we're doing our best, but we can all see that we are also struggling. Even in the world, we are all struggling in different ways. We can see a lot of things are going on around the world. It's not just Nigeria. We just have our peculiarities. But as human beings, I believe that we still have the power to make the effort. We make the effort. We make the change. Nobody can make that change for us.
I agree.
Yes. So if we all fold our arms and say, oh, because the government is not doing this, I can do my own part, or because this person, then everything will just go to blazes. Nothing will work at all. I want to borrow this concept from science. It's called entropy.
Okay.
It's where like a system is always tending towards decay, for want of a better word. So like everything about the system wants to just degenerate and degrade. So it's the actions and the reactions and everything. It just tries to maintain that system in such a way that we do not fall back into a state of decay and degeneration. That's basically how the world works. If we don't put in like our goals, our tasks and our actions to achieve it, everything will just degrade. Let's say, for instance, simple example, let's imagine that you don't take a bath for a week. Let's just imagine that. So it's the actions you take, the waking up in the morning, the brushing your teeth, the showering, keeps you in a state that is not, you know, someone who is unhealthy and sick and stinking. That's simply what I have to say. So yes, the thing is that health is expensive everywhere in the world, unfortunately. It takes a lot of capital. It takes a lot of, skilled manpower, and a lot of things are put into it. So somebody has to bear the brunt of that, unfortunately. Now we live in a society where some people are not economically empowered enough to even afford their health care. Then there should be a system that can take care of it or take care of them until we're able to come to a state where most people can, foot at least some portion of the abuse. And that's the concept that everybody's talking about now. It's part of the steps to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and that's universal health coverage. And I believe that as a country, we are really trying to, working towards it, in different aspects of trying to, make the national health insurance accessible to everybody. But we're not yet there, but we're taking and making the steps, to get there.
Well, we look forward to the day when we will truly get there, because probably 10 years ago, we said we're not yet there, but we're taking the steps. 15 years ago, we're not yet there, we're taking the steps. There's always baby steps every year. Yeah. That's what I see.
It's better than sitting still.
Yeah, true. But talking about these suicide and mental health cases, I know that there's been a lot of brain drain in Nigeria, so I'm not going to talk about this without looking at the medical sector as well. I know you just talked about the situation where you all had like an open dialogue and had conversations as to, what's really going on. But how is it at your end? Because I know that we bring in a lot of pressure from outside, and sometimes some doctors cannot handle it and they return it back to us. People go through a lot when they're bringing in their patients, their loved ones that they're emotionally attached to, and doctors just throw it back at you like, what the hell? I remember when I was going to have my first daughter, the first thing that they did to me when I got to the hospital was, it was my first experience, and everybody was like looking out for me, holding me. Oh, sorry, I was in labor. And the midwife just screamed, "Leave her alone!" Like, what the? And I was looking at her like, "Why are you so mean?" I cried. Like, why would you treat me like I'm not human? Don't you understand what I'm going through? Yeah. But I know she screamed at me. Some way, it gave me a bit of strength, but it didn't work. It didn't sit well with me. Neither did it sit well with every member of my family who brought me in. And she chased everybody out. And I was like, is this how people are? And I feel like you guys tend to transfer the pressure to your patients sometimes. And you're supposed to be the guardians of this mental health thing. So why are you sometimes the ones who unleash the terror?
Okay, so I want to step in there by saying we're not the guardians of mental health.
No, what I mean is, I don't mean that you are supposed to be what I mean by guardians of, I just used it like in quotes.
Okay.
Like you're supposed to be the ones to help people out.
All right.
When it comes to their mental health, and there's a way you are supposed to be special. You're supposed to be perfect. You are supposed to be perfect to us.
Wow. That's a huge expectation.
Yeah, exactly. So our expectation is, please be perfect and take care of us.
Yeah.
That's why we're entrusting our lives in your hands.
Yeah.
So when you unleash terror, where do you expect us to run to?
Okay, here's the thing. I think we need to do a bit of housekeeping here.
I like that.
And that's like expectation management.
I like that.
First of all, yes, there's a standard that health workers are held to. We swear an oath, of course, that involves a lot of things. And one of them is like to, uphold our patients' care, to the utmost of our ability as much as we can, and not hurt them. It's called beneficence and non-maleficence, just short form of saying like, do no harm, just help the person. If you can't help the person, move the person along to where they can get help, and all of that sort of thing, which is something that we're supposed to hold ourselves to. It's a very high high standard to hold ourselves to. But I also want to say this, and that's why I say that we're not the guardians of mental health, because if you going back to the frameworks that were the conceptual framework of handling health, mental health,
yes.
we're now moving more from institutionalized help to more of community-based help. That's why I kept talking about that relationship. There are other, protective factors, but relationships and all that, because sometimes, especially when it comes to mental health, there's a lot more help that you can get from when you're outside of the institution than even when you're inside. It doesn't mean that, the meds, the diagnosis and all those, but usually if you're having, for instance, you're having therapy, maybe in your house, or maybe your community center, or maybe if your church is that open-minded, right, you would feel more comfortable. You would feel more comfortable than doing it in the sterile, walls of a doctor's office. It's been shown that way. So we're trying to move more from just institutionalized help, to more of a community thing. So like everybody comes in, from the church leader to the chief, to everybody, to the family, to the market woman, everybody's involved, so that that safe space can be replicated everywhere, because the hospital can't be a silo. It can't meet everybody's needs. Exactly. Now back to the approach you were saying about bringing your what they call it, your
patient.
Yes, you're
unleashing terror on your patient.
Exactly, unleashing terror on your patient. Actually, that's not right. It's not right to unleash terror on your patient. But I also want to say that the doctors, the nurses, everybody are also all human beings. So they may be going through a lot of. In fact, I will not say they may. We are going through a lot of heightened stress. I mentioned that there were a lot of things that we came to in that discussion, and one of them was our work schedule and our work environment.
Yes.
That was one of the reasons why we're all failing at, and it was affecting every other aspect. In fact, there was a recurring theme of resignation in that circle of people that were close to 20. You can imagine. And everybody was saying, like, in fact, I think I'm going to quit tomorrow, or something like that, or I'm going to quit down the line, or I just want to get away. So it was scary hearing that from people who you are looking up to. So people are going through a lot, and it's not just the patients, even the doctors too are going through a lot. Brain drain is part of it, in a team where maybe you're probably the only person doing calls every other day.
Of course.
Yeah, having no sleep, having no rest. You still have to go out and face, the fuel hike and the food price hike and everything. So another thing which someone drew our attention to was that as health professionals, we are the dumping site of people's problems.
I like that. You see, I'm going to come to that, but let's quickly go on a break.
Okay.
This dumping site, I was going to talk about that.
Yes.
That's another thing. Probably what I was trying to express basically, but we'll talk more on it. Let's quickly go on a break.
Thank you.
All right, viewers, I'm sure you're enjoying the conversation so far. Dr. Blessing has been really amazing. Let's go on a quick break. When we return, the conversation continues. Stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. You're still on So Healthy Living, and we're still discussing suicide prevention with Dr. Blessing Eshiet, and she's been telling us a whole lot. In fact, our plate is already full. If you missed the first segment, you probably need to get back to watch again. Dr. Blessing, you were talking about you doctors being the dumping side of people's problems.
Yes.
So how do you manage that? Because that's what I was exactly trying to point out. Because, for instance, somebody comes with the frustration of, I need this person to be okay, standing back and fine like the way they used to be, even if you did not cause the problem. They just believe that you have the solution, and they'll literally drag you into it without everybody wants you at the same time. How do you handle that with your own personal problems, which I know cannot be evaded? You're also going through buying things expensive in the markets. By the time your pay comes in, you look at everything you have to take out for bills and all of that. You already know that this is extreme. You're dealing with that. They're coming. You're also human. You have families who will probably fall ill, because no matter what you do, it happens. One of my pastors is a medical doctor, and he was talking about how he waited for fruit of the womb for 9 years.
Wow.
He had his own. He was helping people. He was even helping people do IVF. His wife's IVF was not working. So you can imagine. But he prefers solutions to other people's problems. But he was struggling with his own. So how do you then handle that kind of situation as doctors?
I would love to not just focus the attention on doctors alone. I would want to say health professionals.
Oh yeah,
because we're so many of us, and we are doing all this together. But because I'm a doctor, I will speak for doctors. But I just want to say that it's not just doctors that are dumping sites. Health professionals.
People even believe that nurses are more face much more stress than you doctors?
Okay, I can't say who's facing more stress. All I can say is that we are all,
Well, it's not a competition.
we are
after
all
all.
stressed, and someone
I
will say
agree.
that there is no medal for this stress Olympics.
Yeah.
So nobody's winning it or anything. So
Of course.
it's rough. Someone was saying something, and it's really struck me. She was like, "You have a landfill, and everybody goes to dump, refuse in the landfill. Where does the landfill empty into?" And she was trying to say that in the hospital, as a doctor, as a nurse, whatever it is you are, people come with their problems. They expect you, like you said, to handle it. They expect you to have all the solutions, and it's multifaceted. We treat the holistic being. You may come in with a headache, but sometimes it's much more than the headache. Sometimes it's a fight with the husband and everything. I've had conversations in the nights on my desk with people who I knew came in there because they couldn't sleep, and they couldn't sleep not because they were ill. Something was going on, and we had long conversations. And I prescribed medication, but I knew that the talk was more than the medication, and that was what they really needed. So it happens a lot. I've had people break down in my consulting room and cry and tell me stuff that I'm like, oh my God. Because sometimes they just want someone to pour out, and they believe that because you've sworn an oath to confidence,
Yes.
you won't share it with anybody else, and they feel at least you have some solution, even if not everything, but at least maybe the health aspect, and they go out feeling lighter. But they've dropped their burden on somebody,
you.
and you are the one carrying that burden now.
So how do you unburden?
That is the problem. Because when we had that conversation, the person was like, how do health workers unburden? Because she was trying to say that she was listening to this conversation we're having in a group, and she was like, all I can hear is that you're going through a lot, but you do not have anybody to pour out to. You've been receiving from different channels, including the patients, but you've not been able to give it out. So it's like you're a kettle, boiling and almost bubbling over, and you don't have where to pour out some of these things. And she gave suggestions, of what we could do to come up with solutions. And some of those things are stuff that I think is a Lagos State University Teaching Hospital. They have an initiative for suicide prevention called SERPIN that also gives care to health workers and emotional workers under emotional stress. And I think we should replicate it across every health facility in this nation. I believe that we should have therapy for health workers. I believe it should begin, because I don't want to go through it. It's going to be a long conversation, but I believe that from the moment when you go into medical school, which is also another kind of stress, there should be some kind of mental health check. It's not uncommon to hear about classmates in medical school who didn't finish because they had mental health disorders. Yes, it's not uncommon. I had it when I was in school. My senior colleagues had it. So it's because of that, the unique kind of stress that medical school is, and nursing school is. A lot of people don't finish. A lot of people drop out or literally fall ill, get institutionalized, because of all that and everything. And then you come out, and then you meet all these things that we're meeting now. So I believe that there should be therapy for doctors. There should be some people actually are going through a lot. There are some people actually, maybe patients in quotes, they also have these issues that have not been diagnosed. But because of the kind of training we have, which is very unique, you're able to compartmentalize. We're called clinicians. I'm sure you should look up the meaning of the word clinical. It just means like you're able to decisively just separate things and just get to the meat of it. Like, what is this? And we have all these codes of what this, it could be this and this.
I
this.
said
exactly.
There's an expectation of you should be perfect. You should have a hang over everything.
Exactly. But the thing is that when you compartmentalize, you're pushing things to the back burner. You're not taking care of it. You can only do that for so long. And it can affect your interpersonal relationship. It can affect your relationships with your boss, with your colleagues, with your junior colleagues, with your patients and their relatives. It can even boil over to your family relationship. So it's not uncommon to hear about health workers having failed, marital relationships and other things. Yes. So I believe there should be therapy, and there should be group therapy. I think it should be something that should be, for want of better, maybe it should be part of policies and in the workplace, where maybe twice a year or something, there should be someone who would come and see everybody, speak to everybody, and then from that they can group people into different categories, and then we can now have like maybe wellness sessions, group therapy, and discuss and stuff like that. Then we should encourage emotional and psychological safety at work. And one thing I'm going to mention here, though you didn't talk about it, you may not know, is that there's an increasing rate of violence against health professionals in Nigeria. and around the world. In fact, where I work, we've had so many incidents of people being verbally abused, people being threatened, people being physically assaulted. Like you mentioned,
one trended on social media.
Yeah, you mentioned about someone coming and wanting you to help. You know, so people come and they think it's magic, and you're about to even start doing something. The next thing, you're grabbed. I'm like, guy, I'm trying to help. When you grab me, and at that moment, when you are attacked, it's fight or flight. You know, you just begin, your brain recircuits everything. At that point, you're defensive. It's very easy to not be able to treat that person or manager. I've heard someone tell someone that if you prick this person again, I'm going to take that, I'm going to stab you. I'm like, whoa. You know, if I were the one, I don't know how I would, it wasn't me, but imagine that. So imagine working that if I prick this person again, this person is going to stab me. You will be picturing that this person is going, it's crazy, you know. And then the kidnaps, we've all heard about it, you know. Our dear colleague Dr. Ganiat, who's not been released for over 8 months now. A lot of things. Some people are being picked up in the health facilities.
Even yesterday.
Exactly.
In Kaduna.
Exactly. So it's scary. So we need to have psychological safety. We need to have physical safety in our workplace, psychological safety in our teams. We should look out for each other. Senior colleagues looking out for junior colleagues, you know. Contemporaries looking out for each other. We should be able to discuss the things that we are going through. We should have therapy, designated therapy. I really believe that if we can talk about it, we can unburden and we can be better for ourselves first, so that we can be better for our patients. Yes.
This is deep. Because I know this is the first time I'm hearing from the perspective of a medical doctor when it comes to their mental health. I would speak for a journalist. I know that most of the times, every day, you know, there was a particular time I told myself, I just want to shut down from watching the TV. I don't want to know what's happening on the news. I don't want to know. Like, I need it for my mental health. Because it was more like every day things are happening. We do programs and people calling, they lament. Some persons would say we could not even afford food. Some would say, did you go to social place? And you could even be called that something just happened somewhere and you need to be there to see what's happening. In scenarios where some family members have been kidnapped, we're there to take the account of eyewitnesses and all of that. It's pretty much to the point that, take it or leave it, you start feeling like I could be kidnapped in the next minute.
Exactly.
You just realize that you're in line, you're already in danger because you heard somebody's story, first person account. Whatever happened to them, you're sleeping and you're imagining it.
Exactly.
It just begins to mess up your mind. And in as much as, in fact, conflict zones, you go for conflict reporting, you're back, you cannot even be back to your normal self.
Yes.
And then you begin to look at, okay, you need therapy and all of that. Sometimes I wonder, the therapists that we go to see and we talk to and they talk to us, they help us, what happens to them at the end of the day? Because they've just heard your story, they've just talked to you and all of that. Another thing is trauma. I believe that's part of what makes up mental health,
Yes.
makes your mental health, creates
Yes.
a mess for you.
Yes.
For lack of a better word. Most of the time, I've been a victim of one chance, and it took me like 6 years. In fact, probably not even gotten over it completely. It took a trauma expert to talk me out of it. Like,
Yes.
this is the reality of things, and talk me completely out of it. And I was like, I didn't realize it was still that bad until when I met with her and I had the conversation one-on-one. But most of the time in this country, you find even kids that have been kidnapped that once they bring them back, they just say, oh, they need like 2 weeks rehabilitation back into society, and they feel like it's over. It took me 6 years. I don't know about other people, but I'm just saying.
Yes.
And this is not a situation where I had to live with whoever it is. It was just like a very cool thing, and then the meeting was over and they took whatever it is they had to take and then let me go. How much more people who lived with them for as long as they did before they were released and all of that. The story of the Chibok girls and other people that have been kidnapped and released over time. In fact, I even heard that some persons don't even survive it. Some persons eventually kill themselves because they can't stand the fear of being alive, you know, like that. So in this kind of situation, especially because you said it has to start from somewhere.
Yes.
Is it possible that Because I'm looking at, if we keep dumping here, dumping here, dumping here, what happens to the dump itself? Just like we just talked about. Because the psychologists themselves, their mental
need
health,
someone, yes.
Exactly, because I'm looking at myself now. Whenever we go for such reporting, I was not there. Somebody has just dumped on me, and I'm beginning to feel uncomfortable. I need time off, and I dump on another person. What happens to that another person? Because me now, when I'm dumping different aspects. Because one person has told me their singular story, another person told me their singular story, then I bring it together and I dump it on another person. And I'm not the only person that is dumping on them. Probably other people come to dump on them.
Yes.
But what's the things that we can do for ourselves? Because sometimes you don't have to wait for the government.
Yes.
So what are those protective factors? Because I know you mentioned some protective factors.
Yes.
What are those protective factors that individuals, society, community, everyone can, do to help? And we would still not be dumping on each other in a way that we don't have where
toxic.
to throw it. Exactly.
Yes.
Where to throw it.
So, so I mentioned the social relationships as one of the protective factors. Another thing that is a protective factor, believe you me, is faith and spirituality. Now it's a double-edged sword. You spoke about the other end of the sword, where it was used in a toxic manner to downplay, what people were going through. But one thing that faith and spirituality does when used in the right way is that it provides us with a moral compass, a value system. Even if you had not sat down, and every human being should sit down to decide what are your values, what am I going to live by, come what may. Most times, if you are serious with your faith and spiritual belief, within the tenets of that practice are some, will I say, values that are held dearly, and that alone can contribute to your own personal value system. I spoke about, or maybe I haven't mentioned this before, and I think I'll get there. One of the things that can help you is having, a moral and value compass to kind of regulate you. I want to borrow a statement I heard from a preacher who said, you have to be your own personal thermometer. A lot of things can be happening around you, but you decide what you let affect you. So you should not allow the external factors, affect how you feel inside. As much as you can, try to regulate how you are feeling inside. And that's a journey. It's a process. It's easier said than done. But you have to make the decision to intentionally do that. If not, that dumping side thing you mentioned is going to be your everyday reality.
Okay, sorry to cut you.
Yes.
I know you have a lot to say when it comes to that protective factor, but I just wanted to quickly cut in on that.
Yes.
That you have to be your personal thermometer.
Yes.
Decide what you allow to affect you.
Yes.
But we all know that even the religious book speaks of faith.
Yes.
And it says it grows from hearing and hearing the words.
Yes.
And again, the same religious books talks about you guarding with your heart, guarding your heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life. But do not forget that we hear things.
Yes. So how can we keep our
ears
closed?
Keep it closed? Because take it or leave it.
Yes.
Somehow, the conversation we've had today is going to stick with me. It's going to stick with our viewers at home. Somebody has learned something.
Yes.
That's the reality of impactful conversations.
Yes.
Now, the same way we have impactful conversation, we cannot undermine the same power of other conversations that are not impactful.
Yes, coming into our space.
Even fake news.
Yes.
Spreading everywhere.
Exactly.
Misinformation everywhere.
Yes.
They stay and they become the reality. There are lots of misconceptions today that if I begin to list them out, you'll be like, what? It's not even true.
Exactly.
So, stuff like that.
Yes.
How can you be deliberately saying, because even if you say, I'm not taking this, your subconscious has taken something.
Yes. That I'm not a faith, a religious leader, so I cannot speak much for them. But what I can say is this, and this is what I drew from that conversation. Okay. Like I said, it's a journey. What that means is just that it's just about intentionality. You mentioned guarding your heart, which is a Christian statement. I don't know, I'm sure other religions have something similar to that. But why I was trying to draw that whole thing was that the reason why religion and spirituality, in fact, this was mentioned in I think it was the WHO who wrote a suicide prevention guide. And I think that was like 20, not sure exactly the year, but they released that guide, and part of it was that, religion and spirituality, and they mentioned the whole double-edged part, where people, use it in the wrong ways, in a toxic manner, people can actually use it to regulate themselves. And I mentioned why, because of the fact that it can give you, a moral compass. So a moral compass helps you to make the right decisions. So for instance, like he said, how do you decide what comes into your space? Understand? You can decide that, okay, for instance, let's say I decide that I'm going to be living by integrity. No matter where I find myself, I'm going to make sure that no matter what happens, even if it's going to hurt me, I'm going to stand on the side of, truth and honesty and fairness. Of course, life is going to test you. It's going to throw you in a place where you have to make a decision, even to protect your own self. But if you decided and you meant that decision that I'm going to live a life of integrity, at every time when you meet those situations, you're going to make decisions that even though it may hurt you, you're making that decision for the sake of maintaining that value system. And what that happens is that it becomes a habit. After you keep doing it over and over, it becomes a habit. And when it becomes a habit, it informs your identity. Let me say, for instance, now, I am a doctor. Why am I a doctor? I went to school for over 6 years. I practiced for a couple of years. I've done my internship. I've done my housemanship. I've attended to X number of patients. I've done X number of procedures. Because I have done this and this and this and this, and I've done this and this and this training, I believe I am a doctor. So therefore, I am a doctor. Do you understand? Absolutely. So it's sometimes it's the decision and the action that informs your habits, which informs your identity. So if I say, for instance, that I'm a YouTuber, it means I'm always showing up every day, making these videos and putting it, and then I'm having this, this following, and then YouTube is paying me money, and then I can say I am a YouTuber. But there are actions behind it. So that is where the faith part comes in. Sometimes, if people practice, there are different faith practices according to the books as they should, they would find some things that they can draw on, to build that moral compass that can help to inform their decisions, that to some extent will help to prevent the dumping side of life from cutting into your space, because you've already drawn those lines. Of course, you'll be tested, but you've drawn those lines, and then you're like, okay, come what may, this is how we'll tough it out, and we'll try to stick to it this way. Of course, you come back with bruises sometimes, but most times, if you stick to it, you come out stronger at the other end. Yeah, that's it. And that's not the only thing. It's also about practices for emotional and social well-being, practices of positive emotional and social well-being, positive thinking, good problem solving, handling your emotions well, knowing how to manage and cope with stress. These are the it's called social and emotional habits, and schools around the world now are even inculcating this into their curriculum, teaching children from primary school, on how to be able to handle life aspect. Nobody teaches us these things, but life teaches you these things in a very painful way. So when we begin to teach problem solving, there's a way to think logically, think critically, come up with solutions. Because
that's why I love the game of chess.
Yeah, because when you have a problem,
and
I read somewhere once, I can't remember who said that a problem that cannot be solved is not a problem anymore, but a fact to be coped with over time. So you have to be able to solve a problem. And if you cannot find a solution, then you have to have a good coping mechanism with what that does to you. If not, it's going to ruin every other aspect of your life. And we are interconnected. That's how we are. If you're stressed, there are some physical symptoms you will have. And that will make you even more stressed.
Sure.
And that will make you not function well in your work and other things. And it may even affect, if you're a religious person, it may even affect your relationship or your faith practice. You understand? So that something may be happening to you in your finances, but it's affecting your relationship with your spouse. And then you go to work, and because you had a fight with your spouse, it's affecting your productivity at work. And then you get queried, or you something happens and you come back, and we cannot separate one thing from the other. We have to learn how to think positively, have positive self-image, know your self-worth, self-esteem. We talked about the values. Even if you're not a religious person, you need to sit down and decide, what are the values that will guide my life? If you don't do it for yourself, life will do it for you. And life will give you something that you do not want. And then we'll find ourselves along like, I don't think I'm worth anything anymore. But if you know your self-worth, if you know your self-esteem, you won't want to jump off a bridge.
Definitely.
You know who you are. You know that.
That self-awareness.
Yes, we may not all be billionaires, but we're all contributing.
True.
Imagine if you wanted to go and buy fuel, and then the gate man that opens the fuel station came in late, so the gate is locked, and then there are cars lined up outside. You're going to be late because one person has not shown up to open the
Absolutely.
Exactly. So no matter how small you think your contribution is, it is a contribution. You have to see yourself as, you know, as I am worthy. Yes, I am worthy. I have something I can give. It may not be something huge. It may not come up. Social media is affecting the way we see life.
I love the angle you're coming from. But before I let you you know, talk more on that, I want that to be like a rounding up thought.
Okay.
So I want you to also speak on the fact that sometimes we have cultural diversities that, you know, stigmatizes mental health. I want you to speak to that.
Wow. Okay. First of all, there are a lot of myths and misconceptions around mental health. Sometimes people who speak up about their mental health are perceived as weak. You hear about the concept of toxic masculinity, especially in the concept of the patriarchal society that we live in now, you know. So you're perceived as strong, you know. If you don't speak up about your issues, then you're perceived as weak if you're always whining about the things you're going through and always crying about it. But I'm thankful that, you know, the world we live in today is changing. People are beginning to speak up more about the things that they are going through. Another thing also is sometimes there's a taboo associated with mental health. So, for instance, someone could just be having maybe emotional distress, like I mentioned earlier, maybe just some anxiety, and then they're afraid that if they walk into a therapist's office, and everybody knows that that's a therapist's office, they're going to say, I'm a madman. It's like stigma. So they don't want to be perceived as the madman, for want of a better word. So they try to avoid any conversation. In fact, if you even mention it in your family, some places that, I want to see a psychologist, so like, madness doesn't run in our family.
Exactly.
God forbid, you know, but it's, wow. We have to address the fact that those things are not true. They are not true. There's lots of factors, environmental, genetic. We've spoken about a lot of risk factors. And when they have the various interplays in different individuals who are either more susceptible or less susceptible than others, it can come out to full-blown, you know, mental disorders or emotional disorders that can either way affect their mental health. So we need to, as a society, decide that one, we're going to speak up, like we're having an open conversation. And I'm very, very happy that we're having this open conversation. So it feels like I'm just, you know, gisting with a friend and stuff like that. We need to have those open conversations that this is what this is. It's not a label. And it doesn't define you. Yes, even if you could be having or struggling with this, but you can overcome it.
Of course.
Yes. And that's the place of, most times, group therapy. You know, they gather people who are all going through the same thing. And then, you know, a therapist, you know, chaperones the whole thing. And they all share their challenges. And the therapist, you know, walks them through different aspects. And just being in that space, knowing that you're not alone, that alone helps you. Because isolation is one of the things that really contributes to, you know, mental health challenges. So knowing that they're not alone, they're able to share. They go back, they go back feeling supported. Even much more than what the therapist alone would have done for them, you know, in their office. So if we address all these different aspects, you know, taking away the taboos and the stigma, and then even coming back to suicide that we're talking about, some people feel that once this person tries to commit suicide, they will always commit suicide. But that's not true. Some people are just undergoing like stress at the moment. And if they're able to handle it, like we mentioned, they may not, you know, fall back to that, you know, that decision anymore. Yes.
Yeah, because I know it's always leading up.
Yes.
People don't just wake up and just, you know, go into suicide.
Yes.
So your final words to our viewers. So somebody who's contemplating suicide knows that, no, I matter. So please, your final words to them. Okay.
So if you're listening and if you're watching wherever you are, I want to first of all tell you that you're not alone. Whatever it is that you are going through, you're not alone. And you have the power to overcome what it is you're going through. You have to just decide that you want to live another day. You have to believe in yourself. Believe that you're worth more than who you think or who society wants to make you feel that you are. you're of value. You're of great and immense worth. You still have so much to contribute. You have a purpose for being here. Speak up to someone. Find someone you can trust and share it with the person. Don't isolate yourself. Don't withdraw yourself. Find help. Seek help. If you seek help, you'll find it. And you'll be able to walk through your challenges.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blessing. It's been amazing talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for blessing us with so much of yourself. Thank you. And
Thank
for pouring out without holding back. We really do appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
All right, viewers, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Been talking to Dr. Blessing Eshiet, who's the coordinator of Medical Women Association of Nigeria. I believe I'm correct?
The Young Doctors Forum Coordinator.
Oh, Young Doctors Forum Coordinator.
Yes.
Thank you so much for correcting
that.
All right, viewers, I'm sure you've learned a thing or two. And she just told us that you matter. No matter how little you think you are contributing something to society. Yes. So we cannot afford to lose you. You're important to us and we care so much for you. I am Olamide Alhassan and I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.